Here we go with another Sema show episode from our trip a couple of weeks back. What's up for? Oh, we're straight into it. Brian Val's Cummins powered square body dually, built by Tray 5 Customs, body and paint by Eye Candy Paintworks. This thing was epic. I mean, I love these anyway, but look at this thing. Look at the width on the rear. Oh, this is just top-notch building. This also was oozing in class. Also tyre shine by the look of it. So I didn't get too close to those things. I didn't want to get any contamination on me, but it did have a little sneaky peek because this thing was awesome. As was this Continental. A hard top, convertible. It's one of the few cars I wouldn't be fussed, especially with that power plant under the hood. These things, the interiors, look, you can just go classy on that. It doesn't need to be too much. Talking of too much, welder up garage. Well, to be honest, I was actually really blown away by how good these were. What with them having a TV show and that, I did think it might be a little over the top and a little lacking on quality, but the detail was impeccable. As were these. Another example of a TV show that can really produce the goods in the real world. Can dig it. Props. Look at these cars. I mean, they're absolutely exceptional. Works of art. And the fact that there wasn't just one there, but there was two. I think there may have even been a third somewhere else in the halls. But these two different takes on the same sort of thing, you know, the colorways are completely different. Both absolutely impeccable. Personally, it's not really my cup of tea, but I cannot fault the craftsmanship. A bit like on this. Look how straight this thing was. I spent a good bit of time looking around this and checking out how arrow straight all those reflections were. The quality at Sema was just mind-blowing. The other thing we saw a lot of, twin turbos. And why the hell not? What's not to like? Scott, you are a legend. This is Scott Birchall's F100. It's running about 1200 horsepower from a Cummins power plant. What an absolute machine. I had a good chat with him. He's such a super sound guy and clearly a super talented fabricator. That truck, mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. I was so glad to see that in person. This guy's giving a little flex in the reflection here. Yeah, check out my calves, guys. Kevin Hart's G-body. Look at this thing. What a work of art. Really impressed that they kept the V6 in this thing. I mean, it's not standard. Clearly, it's pushing about 650 horsepower. And this is Chargers pushing about 1,000 horsepower. The thing most impressed me about this car, the Speed Core full carbon body shell. I mean, it was absolutely flawless. I'm not a big carbon guy, but when it comes to a full body shell and it's this good, I'm all into it. It was absolutely impeccable. A nice looking car. Talking of nice looking cars, this is Twisted. I think it's a 76 GMC Jimny. I love these things, you know, especially when they're bagged and bodied like this. They're sitting at a stance that you would never expect to see a vehicle like this, and that's what works for me. There was plenty of go at Sema, not just show, as this clearly demonstrates. Can you imagine sitting behind the wheel of that thing, getting these to hook up on the tarmac? That'd be a hell of a moment, wouldn't it? Right, Ring Brothers. Now these guys do show and go. The detail on these things by far surpasses everything else at the show. This is Enyo, which is a 48 Chevy. I mean, where do I start with these builds? The level of detail on these is something I genuinely haven't seen this side of the Atlantic. I mean, look here, look in the back. The cowling for the fans, for example, full carbon fibre, is clearly a one-off moulding, probably CAD designed, molds 3D printed, etc., etc. These guys use technology to the fullest, alongside handcrafted, elements on it, and good old-fashioned skills as well. And it clearly shows, because the fit, the finish, the detail. I mean, I reckon I could look around that for weeks and still keep finding new bits that are completely different to the first impression you have of the car. Just mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And even just looking at the video again, I'm a bit speechless. It was that good. The K5 Blazer as well. I mean, what a build. This was the first of their cars we saw when we were there, and I must have spent an hour looking over this thing. Look, every little detail, these like tie-down loops on the top, CNC engraved with their logo, probably anodized by the look of it. We've got some carbon on the wheel arches. The whole thing, everywhere you look, there were little touches. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a million things on this build that I didn't even see. You know, I went around thinking I'd seen everything. I went back the next day and I saw a whole load of new stuff that I hadn't seen before. I mean, look, even up on the underside of this rollover bar, this sort of T-top section, the details there again, the little brackets, none of this is quick. You know, if you've built a car, you'll appreciate how long these things take. This is one of the things I loved most about Sema, was not only was it finished cars, but there was a lot of work in progress cars as well, as you can see here. So this Lincoln Continental, a little bit different to the black one we saw outside earlier. This thing's going to be an absolute weapon. The size of the wheels mean that you've even got a tub in the little valley at the top of the rear quarter. Savage. When I look at stuff like this, one of the things I always take in is the quality of the metalwork, and this was top notch. I mean, I look at certain things and I couldn't find flaws in lots of this. Here we go, cantilever front suspension, all nestled nicely around the intake pipework. You know, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of hours in there, and that's one of the things I appreciate the most.
See the beard, majestic.
The old majestic beard making a comeback. I think this is one of Ash's favourite cars. It was pretty savage. Look at that rubber. Woo. I wouldn't mind being sat in that with my foot flat to the floor. That'd be a moment. Get your hands off the paintwork. What's this guy doing? Jeez, even at Sema you get some clowns. LT4 motor, I think is that. This was a super clean Camaro. Made it look fairly standard compared to some of the ones there. This is a feast for your eyes, isn't it? Look at this. Wow. Broncos are cool though. Do really like them. Not a big fan of the 2-litre EcoPoupe engine drivetrain, although there were a few 5-litre swapped ones there while we were there. Those would probably be a little bit more entertaining. Just like this thing on the street. Black, copper, open wheel. Another sort of coppery theme going on here, the Hollywood Hot Rods 32. This was a lovely build, super detailed, as you can see there. Yeah, I mean, look, the stainless and that copper sets off really nice, doesn't it? Love it, absolutely love it. Yeah. So this is the Ring Brothers Camaro. Now, believe it or not, this is actually a one-off carbon fibre body, not bare like the Speedcore Charger, all painted. I believe the only factory part left on this car is the side glass, which I can quite believe, because when you look at it, you can tell it's not quite factory. There's little things like 5 inches added to the rear, 3 inches added to the width of the front, recessed centre section of the roof. Had an LS3, which also this car has. This is Cameron Cacalis's GT86. This has gone pretty viral after Sema. You can see why. The young lad's only 21. I think he was saying in a video I saw that he only learnt to weld 2.5 years ago or something insane. And he's built everything on that car himself. So he's a guy to watch in the future, certainly. A guy to watch at the minute, like I've said before, with old Smokey Scott Birchall. That was his E30, just flashed past there. This is a 69.5 Camaro. Funny sort of aging on it. That's because I think it runs a 70 front end and a 69 body. So the guy decided to give it a little bit of an individual look. He'd combined the 2 different years. Props to him. I think 10 years he said this was in the work. Certainly shows, you know, he's got loads and loads of detail going on in this car. It's yeah, it's a hell of a build. So it's towards the end of the day. I think it's about half an hour left of the show. Up here is like mostly tools and paint and tape and stuff. Thought we'd seen pretty much all the cars we're going to see today. And then we come across this beauty. Detail on this is nuts. Impressive stuff. Really pleased to have caught this car. And here we've got Felix Designs Impala. This lowrider was insane. I loved it, absolutely loved it. The mix of the custom paint techniques with the engraving, basically running all the quintessential elements of a lowrider, but just executed absolutely perfectly. I loved it. It was one of my favorite cars of the show for sure. And the fact that the guy drives this thing, drags it down the street, you know, certainly not just a trailer queen that you tuck away in the garage and never see other than at a show like Sema. This thing gets used. He's a Vegas local. We saw him out after Sema Ignited on Friday, had a good chat to him, happy to share some custom paint tips. I mean, this is what car culture is all about. You know, I'm no lowrider guy, but I can appreciate all the time and effort that has gone into this thing. And it makes me want to build one. You know, I look at that and I think, yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to get involved with all that paint. Probably a third of the way through, not even that, I changed my mind and think, why the hell am I doing this? All the headaches that come with it. But you never know, maybe with some of the tips he's given me, I'd be up to the task. I'd certainly take it on. Look at this. I mean, some of the variegated leaf work on this was my favourite bit. He's done some really, really detailed stuff, and the crispness of the edge was really impressive. You know, I've struggled at times personally to get that edge quite that clean. And he's given me a few little tips that I'll definitely try out on the next job, because they weren't all pinstriped in. There was a lot where it was left bare on that turned leaf. So impressive stuff, as was this GTO. You know, supercharged. Why not? This is your classic muscle car, really, isn't it? One deemed to be one of the first proper true muscle cars, the Pontiac GTO, and this has just been updated in a really tasteful way. Now, this has been updated also in a very tasteful way, but completely different. This G-body was nuts. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'd have this over most of the cars in the show, even though I'd have to finish it off. The fabrication on it was brilliant. So many little details that will just transform this car from a stock G-body to what it will be when it's all finished. I mean, obviously the big jobs like the big tubs, the cage, but it was the way that a lot of these things were done that really impressed me on that build. And this was much the same, actually. You know, you can go through it and you go, yeah, okay, you know, we've got the engine, we got the spec there, but it was the detail again. You know, this thing was super straight, the fit of everything was perfect. Just all together a really, really well-rounded build. And actually, that's one thing I noticed about all of Goolsby's customs builds. They were all to a similar level, really sharp in every aspect. There wasn't sort of one bit where you thought, nah, you know, that's a bit lacking. Every box was ticked. Really, really nice work from these guys. And an A100 isn't even one of my sort of go-to vehicles, yet I found myself going back to that several times and having a good old look round, looking for new bits and pieces. You know, that was one of the best things about Sema, is if you go round and then go round again the next day, you see cars that you didn't even see the first time around, let alone details on the cars that you did see. And we did that multiple times, and it was part of the fun of it, being there for several days and seeing so much more that, you know, you thought you'd totally covered. What have we got here? Another supercharger on top of a V8. What's not to like, eh? Yeah, this is class. I love it. Roadster shop again, probably providing the chassis for this one. The resto mod market over there is where it's at. As you can see, it's pretty resto mod heavy in Sema, and because you've got all the stuff there to build them in a sensible way, you know, you can get a full chassis for these cars from the likes of Roadster shop. They had some great stuff there that we were looking at, and yeah, if it wasn't for all the shipping, I think it would be a great way to build stuff. Yeah, this Camaro was really cool. I love this. Looks kind of following a fairly stock sort of paint scheme, etc. But actually, when you delve in deeper and have a look at the front splitter, these side skirts down the side, the rear valance, they're all carbon. And they, I think, certainly by the look of them, they would have originally been satin black, plastic, you know, that sort of thing. So it was quite a factory-looking custom, which I really like. This wasn't so factory looking, as you can see. I mean, not the other one wasn't 100% factory looking, but this really wasn't. But I loved it. I'm not a Mustang guy, to be honest, but if I was going to say, you know, I want a Mustang, it'd have to be super Larry like this. Big Charger again on there. Crazy, crazy stance. Yeah, it just worked. As did this. Candy paint. I mean, we just don't see enough candy painted vehicles, I don't think, mostly because the painters don't have the mental health capacity to take on that level of stress. I mean, if you've ever painted a full candy paint job, it's not a nice experience, to be honest. I haven't found. There's always that added level of stress that just means it's no fun. The end results are absolutely amazing, but not much fun. Talking of end results, this thing was clean. You know, a car like this, you would never have imagined even sort of 10 years ago that people would be building them to this sort of level. It was a T-top car, you know, but they very quickly found popularity, and you can see why. They just ooze that 80s style. Well, what can I say about this? This is a 31 Chevy, the Riddler Award winner of 2022. I think it's called Showbird. There's just so much going on here. I must admit, I didn't really like this. It was a little bit too glitzy and that for me, but there were some features I really liked. I thought the wings were cool. It was a nice fresh idea. The paint was really, really cool. Obviously, again, like I say, you know, candy paint. Wouldn't want to be painting it, but it looked fantastic. As did this, like, you know, bright orange, really striking. Again, wouldn't be my colour of choice, but one of the best things was the variety at Sema, and just the fact that you could take in so many different styles. And I really found myself being drawn to certain things more than anything that, you know, that I wouldn't have previously thought about. For example, this satin or sort of off gloss finishes in load beds and engine bays. I mean, this one's obviously full gloss in the engine bay, but with the outside of the vehicle being full gloss, just really worked. Really, really sharp. You know, a bit like how clean these bays are. There's just certain things that I brought back with me, and I'm definitely going to incorporate in some of our builds. Trying to tuck as much stuff out of the way just to clean up the engine bays, that's definitely one. And that satin finish in the engine bays and in the beds at the back, I haven't actually caught much on video, but I mean, you know, we're too busy looking at stuff like this. But it's a really nice technique that we're definitely going to use more, I think. This was super classy. Just a perfect example of running it basic. Monochrome, you know, just two colours, keep it simple, and just execute everything to a level that, you know, you can't fault. This has got to be one of my favourite trucks ever. This OBS, I think it's Good Guys Rods and Customs. It's on the Low Pro Roads to Shop chassis, but it's the white, the pink. It's an OBS. I mean, what's not to like? Look at this thing. Wet sound speakers in the back. Crazy. Another epic build. We saw this roll out just behind or just in front of the last one, the OBS. Look at it. May Pearl, I think it's called. This guy's done a fantastic job. It just oozes excess. You know, like America does stuff like this so well. Look at the size of the rear wheels, the tubs right up to the top. I mean, it doesn't really resemble a Blazer all that much anymore, but I love it. And whether or not I could rock this on the streets of Cornwall, I'm not 100% sure, but over there, it just fitted in. It just looked absolutely perfect. Oh, it's a Bel Air dash. I'd never noticed that before. Anyway, that was Sema. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll come back with some more updates on stuff soon. Cheers, guys.